Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us again for another episode of the Leadership for the Now show. My name is Florin Lungu, and I'm so delighted to be with you today. And today we have a wonderful guest, Linnea Bywall from Alva Labs. And we had a challenge with her calendar, and we had to record this for you, but we wanted to keep the commitment. So Linnea and I got on a phone call and recorded this conversation for you. So here is Linnea. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us today for another episode of the Leadership for the Now. Today I'm joined by a wonderful guest, Linnea Bywall, which is the head of People and Operations at Alva Lab. Hi, Linnea. Thank you for joining us today.
Super fun. Happy to be here.
Thank you for making the time. You have some experience with recruiting. You work in the field, and you also are quite, I'll say, experienced in reading people because you're also a psychologist, right?
Exactly. That's what they teach at the psychologist program.
Eh,
Understanding people 101.
All right, and I think this is a really valuable skill for many of us, and I think you have some knowledge and some experience that you could share with leaders watching.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Right. So I'm, as you said, a psychologist. I am now working as head of people at Alva Labs. I've been here for 3 years. Prior to that, I worked as a consultant within like the leadership development space. And prior to that, worked with recruitment. So in some way or form, I have worked with hiring or growing people. Other than that, I have 2 kids, live in Stockholm, love running.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that, insight into your life. So tell us a little bit, what kept you in this field, like, working with people, developing people, recruiting people, where this passion comes from.
I think the short answer is that I used to run track. And I had a coach back when I was younger, and he was actually a psychologist, and he was like an important person to me. And I found the topic like super fascinating and interesting. I did not at the time really understood what a psychologist actually did for a living, but I realized like, okay, this is at least something that I will enjoy studying. So I kind of started the psychologist program without really knowing exactly what I wanted to do. But I had a course when I studied in the US of like industrial and organizational psychology. And that one like really hit home. And I realized that this is something that I want to do, impacting on a more like broader level. As a more clinical psychologist, you're often stuck in treating like one patient at a time. I obviously don't get as like close with like a candidate, but I hope that with the work that I do, I can impact more on a like maybe not as deep level, but still hopefully prevent anyone from tipping over to a bad position or something. So I think it's just like the fascination for the topic of like psychology itself, and what fun stuff you can do with it. What's caught my eye, I guess.
Wow. Wow. So you realize that you can make a bigger impact, right? By working with organizations and at a broader scale rather than working one-on-one with people.
Yeah, exactly. And then uh, to be 100% transparent, I'm also I'm not a great listener, which is kind of an important thing for a psychologist. So I think I prefer to speak and hopefully inspire, rather than sit in one-on-ones and listen, because that's not necessarily my strongest suit. So that also
Right. Well,
helped
that
with the decision.
absolutely. And that's a great awareness that you know your strengths and also your blind spots. And it's great that you find your spot. It seems like, at least from what I see from the outside, that you found your place with Alva Lab. So tell us a little bit about what Alva Lab does.
Sure. So Alva Labs, we are a SaaS organization. We offer a tool for candidate assessment. So if you've ever applied for a job and did some sort of psychometric tests measuring like personality or logic ability, that could have been us. So we help companies hire in a more like fair and objective way, really. And I have worked with different test vendors and thought I was done with this industry, but then Alva came along, and I could not join this fantastic company. So that's what I nerd out recruitment in a recruitment nerdy environment, which is fantastic.
Wow. And this is actually an experience and expertise that most leaders do not have and need. So tell us a little bit about what you see now being the challenges with attracting and recruiting top talent.
Mm. No, I think you bring up an important point here. It's like as soon as someone is promoted to a leadership position, they're automatically, they need to be able to hire people and grow and build a team, which is not something you just do like that. It takes time and knowledge and effort. But so to your question, like how you can attract talent, and like I think the most important thing is that we need to keep in mind that like building your team is the most important thing as a manager. I once coached a manager, and I think he put it so well. He's like, okay, if I look at my salary and the combined salary of my team, it's very easy to like just follow the money. Where should I spend my time? It's not on like my job, it's on the team's job, because they are a bigger cost for the organization and therefore matter way more than like my deep work. So like building a team is the most important thing. And I think a lot of leaders miss the fact that it takes time and effort. It's not that you can just go to a either like external recruitment firm, or in your internal talent acquisition team, and like order a team member. You have to be proactive in reaching out to candidates, wine and dine with potential team members. You have to really like build that like talent pool of yourself, and you have to spend a lot of time and effort in the recruitment process once it's started. Because I think it's so easy to just want a new teammate or want a great team, but if you don't invest in that, like building it and growing it, it's not going to happen by itself. And then one final aspect of like what a leader needs to do when it comes to recruitment is just like stop relying on gut feeling. I think I've met so many managers that comes with this idea of that they can know a person and that they're such a good people person and that they can like see through someone. I've studied psychology for 7 years. I've worked with recruitment for like 9 years now. I cannot do that. There's no way, because people are so much more complex. So like if you are relying on your gut feeling and your people sense, you're probably just like fooling yourself in believing that you can find a diamond in the rough or see who will be a good fit. That's not, you're relying on facts that won't really help you. So I think like seeing that it's important, spending time, and not relying on gut feeling.
Wow, that's so good. And I so resonate with that. And the last point there is just, it's music to my ears, because I'm also quite interested in, personality assessment. And we actually at the Maxwell Leadership, we had a set of personality assessment, and I use that with clients. And when we sit and we look at the recruitment process that doesn't have any kind of assessment, and I sat once with a recruiter in a company, and when I just share with her that you connecting with someone during an interview, it doesn't mean anything for how the person would fulfill or not the role that you're recruiting for.
Yeah.
At best, it says that, yes, of course, the two of you had a connection. It might be that you have similar personality styles, but it doesn't mean that that's what is needed for the role, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. There's actually studies showing that if you're higher in like extroversion, if you're more socially outgoing, and if you're higher in agreeableness, meaning if you're like more socially adaptive, you tend to do better in interviews, because people tend to like those type of traits in an interview situation. But it's not necessarily something that is tied to like job performance in that specific role. So when we do interviews, we are kind of like tricked into liking certain qualities and people that are, as you said, like similar to us. and therefore fail to hire diversity and fail to hire people that are actually helpful, or like the right person for that position.
Absolutely. And that's exactly when the person's penny dropped, when I said, well, you sitting with a candidate, you might believe that they're a great fit for the culture, but you have not looked maybe at the role and see that if this person needs to work maybe by themselves, they are a developer, they're a technical person, doesn't matter their people skills. And those people that are very technical might do poor job in an interview, right? And so you might not even hire them because of that feeling you got during the interview. So I totally agree with you. But I also want to just re-emphasize that again, that leaders have an active role in recruitment and
Yeah.
attracting talent, because that's many leaders, or very often they just kind of place an order at
Yeah.
their recruitment department, and they complain that, well, you bring me bad people.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's so important. So now, let's say someone understands what we just said, and they just pick these three things here and they apply them. Now, what opportunities do they see if they do these three things that you just shared with us?
So if they use those type
Yeah, if
of
they
tools,
spend,
or if
yeah,
they
like all that you should, if they take the time to actually get involved, right? If they take the time
right.
to get to know those people, if they use tools, right? And
Yeah.
if they apply these things, then what
Yeah.
kind of opportunities are available now for people that apply this?
Very good question. So what's interesting is like, if you look at like job performance, because I mean, to some extent, what managers should be concerned about is like keeping a team happy, retaining them, and getting the most out of them. So if we like focus on the getting the most out of them perspective, job performance is actually like normally distributed, meaning like it follows this bell curve. Most people are in the middle, and most people are actually like average performers. And a like good rule of thumb is that if you hire an average performer, that person tends to bring a value of like 140% of their cost back to the organization. If you hire someone who's like below average when it comes to job performance, they will tend to actually like cost the organization money, meaning they don't even cover their own cost, meaning it's like a negative value assigned to that person. Compared to if you hire a high performer, someone that's really like suitable for the job, those people tend to bring approximately 180% of their overall cost back to the organization. And I think like one super interesting statistics is if you take an average organization, approximately 5% of the employees will stand for 26% of the outcome. So if like, I think imagine if you had a team full of those 5%ers, full of those like high performers. So it's not just like you will have a team that will create you less headache. It's actually that you as a leader will have a team that will completely change the organization, change how you work, change the results, without you having to do everything, or spend too much time doing things that you shouldn't be doing. So it's really about creating results for yourself. So spending time like building the right team is the most important thing when it comes to impacting performance. You can do a bunch of things once you have the team in place, but like who you bring in will matter so much.
Wow. And I completely agree with you. I think we are on the same page on many topics, but also here, just because I used to take leaders through, the 80-20 principle, right? That says that, 20% of our, team, 20% of our activities will bring us, a disproportionate result, which is 80% of the results. And I think that's probably more or less of what you just said, that 5% of our people, right, will give us, 26 times more, right? And what we look at is you mentioned that leader you discuss with, look at their salary and look at their team salary and look at the cost that the team has. And that's what we also advise leaders to do. Look at the top 20% people on your team. So once you have build a team, if you're able to identify who are those top 20% of your people and spend 80% of your time with them, that will give you the best return on investment. And usually, naturally, what happens is that people that are not high performers, they usually need a little bit more support than high performers. So it's natural for us to, kind of take care of the baby that is crying rather than taking care of the baby that is not crying, that could actually go further. So I just wanted to re-emphasize that what you just said, it's so spot on and so important. So once we spend that time into recruiting the right kind of people, making sure that we have diversity, and then we recruit people based on the roles and their personality, not gut feeling, that's when we could look into performance. So was there anything else, because you said now this was to improve the performance, right, of the people being in the team? Was there anything else you want to add?
No, I think the fact that like the leadership role today is so much about like, obviously it's like safeguarding performance, but it's also about like keeping your team happy, motivated, and engaged. And if you bring on people to your team that will do a good job, you can actually have that time to spend with them, coaching them, and really like retaining them, rather than, as you said, like just taking care of the crying baby and not having time to care for the talent that you have. I read a report like not that long ago, like in Europe, approximately like 40% of all employees are looking to change their jobs during this year, mainly due to like stress and like lack of work-life balance. So I think like as a leader, keeping your talent will be so important, because I think we've all been through that like painful process of we're lacking someone and we need to hire someone and it takes longer, and then we need to onboard, and then we need to spread out that work on the rest of the team, and that risks us losing more talent, and it turns into this domino effect. So by hiring the right people, we can also open up the opportunities to actually spend time with the people that need us.
Wow. I think I have a follow-up question here, because and I heard you probably shared this in another instance or another interview, but what would be your answer to a leader says, well, I don't even have talent to fill my open position. I'm not in the position to choose, right? Now we're not in a position to choose, right? What would you say to someone that believes that there is not enough talent, and maybe now I don't have that luxury? Because when we talk about assessment, say, well, Florin, that's a great idea, but you know what? We barely have one or two applicants, so I cannot use your assessments, right?
No, I think this has really, like, over the last year, been such an important and challenging area for a lot of companies, where like the talent shortage has been tough for a lot of companies. And what I would say to them is that I would probably say that they're probably viewing talent the wrong way. Because yes, there is a talent shortage if you view talent based on what is written in a CV. If you only want to hire someone that has studied at a certain university, that has a certain degree, that has worked at a certain type of company, that use a specific programming language, then you are really, really like limiting the candidate pool that you can hire from. I think what successful managers and companies are doing is really like reshaping how they view talent. So if we think about like a human being can be compared to like an iceberg. When we meet them, what we see them doing, their behaviors, that's kind of what's like above the surface. And that's what we will judge them based upon. But like why they behave and why they perform the way they do is pretty much based on two different aspects. One is what we refer to as like readiness, what they know, their knowledge, and what they have in their experience backpack, what they've done before. It will impact to some extent how they will perform. But like the largest piece of the iceberg, that's like the furthest away from the surface, we really need to dive into the cold water here to understand it, is what we refer to as potential, like who that person is. And that relates way more to their like stable traits, their core, kind of like the essence of that individual. And that decides so much more of like how someone behaves. And the problem with like recruitment today is that we focus too much on knowledge and experience. I mean, I was done as a psychologist 2015. Um, the things that I were taught when I studied are already like no longer relevant. So even if I have like knowledge on paper, it doesn't really say something. Um, and I think what's interesting is like the way we today view talent is again those like fancy logos, but also like the norm of performance. There is a large part of the population that has a struggle to find a job. So just to kind of name some statistics here, if you are a woman, you have to send in 30% more application compared to if you are a male applicant. If you're a person of color, you have to send in 50% more application than if you're white. If you have an Arabic sounding name, you have to send in 60% more application if you operate in a like European country. And that's like regardless of your work experience. And it's not because all recruiters are vicious and evil people. It's because the human brain evaluates candidates based on their life and or their experiences, which makes like we view talent as someone that has studied in on that university, has this certain degree, is white, is middle-aged, and is male. And then yeah, I understand that you don't have any applicants, but if you kind of like flip the recruitment funnel around and focus on potential, like who is this individual, what are their like their core characteristics, rather than reading a CV, you will open up the talent pool a lot. And some hacks that you can use is like inclusive language in your job ads is going to really help you with attracting candidates, and then not including too many requirements, because we also see that like some people will not apply if the list of requirement is too long. Men tend to be way more comfortable with sending in an application even if they only meet like half of the requirements, while a female applicant won't. So I mean, I think we are neglecting a lot of candidates, and when we are like sourcing candidates, we are focusing in like a too narrow kind of duck pond rather than seeing like the full possibility here. Long answer and long rant, but that was
No, I
some
think it's
thoughts.
it's very no, it's very accurate and very insightful, and you also challenge that idea even more because I know you're gonna share maybe in another event or somewhere I saw that you're talking about just getting rid of CVs.
Yeah,
So how
exactly.
because I think if I just add my kind of my observation there is that I think recruitment it has been based on experience and degrees just because it was a very easy, comfortable way of comparing
Yeah.
people, and
Yes.
also of from my point of view of placing the responsibility on someone else. So for example, if I got a degree from the university, then that university might must have tested me and I have
Yeah.
a certain degree or certain level, right? So
Mm.
they take less of a risk if they hire me because someone else has kind of stamped me, right?
Exactly.
And I'm kind of certified. The same with experience. So if I work for another company before, well, I'm not their first, they are not my first employer. They don't take a big risk because if I stay
Yeah.
at that company for 2 years or three, then it says that at least I've done something,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
didn't jump around. So I think this is finding easier way of recruiting is looking at experience and looking at degrees and looking at certifications.
Mm.
But what you just shared takes a huge amount of energy and intentionality from the recruiter. And
Mm.
the question that probably people have is like, how do we assess potential now?
Yeah.
Right? Because
uh,
that's actually how do you assess potential? And
mm.
then I'll let you speak into that a little bit, and then maybe share with us your idea about why we don't need CVs.
Mm. Sure. So the like most evidence-based and like scientific approach to understand potential is by using psychometric assessments, so personality tests, logic tests, because it will measure something that is very stable over time, and that actually is very tightly linked to job performance. So that's like the easiest way to assess potential and understand potential in a recruitment process. There are other ways, but that's the quickest and most like scalable, cost efficient way to do it. And like then going over to why get rid of the CV, I think an average recruiter spends about 6 seconds screening a CV. And you can try this at home of how much you can read in 6 seconds. It's not a lot. And what we bring with us from that like super quick screen is like going back to that fancy logo if you worked at that cool company or that university degree, maybe a picture. And I think then the like biases really impact our decision. We tend to move forward people that are similar to ourselves, that are in line with the norm. And we don't really know, because I think we can all, like, if we go back to when we were like studied at university or in high school or whatever, just because you had a certain degree doesn't necessarily mean that you did the same work or that you know the same things. Same thing, like two identical CVs did not stand for the same performance. So I think by getting rid of the CV and replacing it with, for instance, like psychometric assessment or screening questions that you can do way more like objective, will help you open up your talent funnel, select the right candidates to move forward with, and like spend the right time on the right candidates, but also giving that talent pool that is so like left out from the job market a chance to show what they can do.
Sure. Because this is the challenge. Like, how can we start looking at potential if we already run out people by CV, right? So
Yeah.
if you still have the CV, then you're not gonna, because the way I know most recruiting processes work, like you screen CVs and you only send a psychometric test or a personality test to someone that has kind of passed that first screening, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
you don't test everyone, because there's also a cost involved in that, an investment. So then you don't even get the chance to see someone's potential if you already kind of dismiss their
Exactly.
candidacy because of their CV.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like we do it, we flip it around, and we have a lot of customers that flip it around, that actually, like, as soon as someone send in an application or as soon as we have sourced a candidate, they are met by this psychometric assessment that needs to be obviously like candidate friendly and stuff like that. I think that goes without saying. And then we look at more like the readiness part. Once we know that this is the person that is the right person for the job, then we can look at what have they done before. Hopefully we can find someone that matches both aspects. But I would personally, like building my team, much rather bring in someone that has like the right attitude. I think there's the saying like hire for attitude and train for skills. Yeah. It's so accurate, but still organizations across the world do the exact opposite.
Wow, that's so true, and I completely agree with you. So we're almost at the top of the time. So tell us maybe one or two things that you have done at Alva Labs that maybe other organizations could inspire themselves from.
Sure. So I mean, difficult to say what will inspire others, but I think one thing that I'm really proud of is that we started having 7 weeks of vacation for everyone who works for us, just to kind of stand out from the crowd, and selecting one aspect of like the benefit program that we believe in. So everyone has 7 weeks of vacation. That's awesome. We have like flex way of working. I mean, this is not obviously something that I have created myself, but like we don't really count hours. We don't care where people work from, when people work, as long as they get their job done. But then like something, a little baby of mine here at Alva, is that we work a lot with psychological safety. So at least twice a year, we do psychological safety workshops. Often I ran these workshops, and we do them like cross team, within teams, focusing on different things to kind of make sure that we have this like foundation of psychological safety in place. And that's kind of like the foundational work for how we work with our values, which we established like really, really early. So I was number 14 in at Alva, and today we're 80. But I think we established like our values and our how we want our culture to be like when we were, 15, 16 people. And that is now incorporated in like everything we do. It's incorporated in our leadership program, in our how we set salaries, how we evaluate performance, how we run company events. So I think that's also something that is really nifty and I really appreciate. But there are a lot of stuff, but those are just a few.
Absolutely. And you also mentioned salaries.
Yeah.
Am I wrong or am I right that you have an initiative where you kind of update everyone's salary, at the market level?
Yes, correct. So I think the worst part, if you want to like retain talent, is believing that they will be happy with a 1% increase in salary if the market has increased 12%. So we really wanted to establish like, if you're willing to pay a certain level for a new hire, why shouldn't you be willing to pay the exact same amount for someone that you have already hired and has been loyal to you? So what we have done is on a yearly basis, we do external salary benchmarks for all job families. And then we use that in the like salary review where people like are in like different levels and we can like update those levels based on the market value. So if the value has increased, those roles will get salary increases. If it hasn't increased, then it will probably be the same. Then you can still get a higher salary if you have performed well, but you will still be in that like same category or span of salary. So yes, I think the view we have on it is that you should have a fair salary, but it should also be an on-market salary, and it should be on market regardless if you started here, 6 months ago or 3 years and 6 months ago. So yes, that's true.
Wow, and that's so good, and it's so courageous for you to do that. I mean, as a company, because so many companies just sometimes use, like, candidates would go, or actually employees would go out and kind of check their market value and come back with an offer and say, well, I think I can get more somewhere else, and that's when the company kind of reacts to that and say, well, let us give us a counter offer, right?
Yeah.
And that's too late, right? That's completely too late. So yeah, it's so important that you do that, and probably results speak for themselves.
Hopefully, we have a pretty high engagement and people have stayed. So that's a good receipt. Hope to keep it that way.
Yeah, thank you so much for making the time and sharing your knowledge with us. So one of the last questions we usually ask in this kind of interview is like, what does leadership today means to you? Like, if you define it in a sentence or word, something, how would you put it?
I mean, I think to some extent, I think the leadership role today is about setting like expectations and targets, being super clear on what's expected of someone. And then B, and this is my favorite part, like following up and giving feedback on that. I think a lot of managers focus more on the first part, not necessarily saying that they're all excelling in it either, but still like focusing on setting targets and just hoping that results will happen. I think most leaders today actually miss the following up part. So setting expectations and follow up on progress would be one thing.
That's so good, and I can see how that's a really good summary of what leadership means, and I agree with you. Many times, and now we have this hands-off type of leadership or management where we can just give the target and we say, well, they're going to figure it out. And not everyone will figure it out. Some need more support than others. And I think you're spot on with following up and giving feedback.
Yeah, and I think like even the ones that do find a way and do figure it out, they still need a feedback loop. I think like, again, hire great people and make sure that they thrive by giving them positive feedback. A little positive feedback never killed anyone. So I think we very, very often miss that part. Like make sure that people know that they're doing a good job and what part of the job that is good.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed it too, and we gave some value to our viewers. And I look forward to see everyone on the next episode.
Yay.
All
Thank you
right,
for having me.
take
Bye.
care. Thank you. Bye bye. All right, wasn't that good? She shared some really good information and some challenging thoughts about recruiting. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to see you again next week with another wonderful guest. All right, take care. Bye bye. See you soon.